Hello, this is Ed Chapman, and this video cast is going to continue our exploration of food webs and food chains, and we're going to primarily focus on the difference between primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers, and we're going to make sure everybody understands what a decomposer is. So, food webs, food chains, and these words right here. A food chain is held together by arrows, and the arrows represent energy. And food chains always begin with a producer. So down here, we have a producer, a green plant. It's producing energy because it's an autotroph from sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. And some of this energy is being passed to the next step, which is an earthworm. And then the earthworm is passing some of its energy when it's consumed by a predator like a turtle. And then finally, some of the energy that originally started here in this producer is being passed all the way along the food chain to a top predator like an eagle here. So the arrows represent the flow of energy, primarily in the form of calories or food energy, through a chain of organisms all along the way. Energy is being passed. Now, communities in biology are held together by food chains and food webs. And if you combine multiple chains, you build something called a web. And this is easiest to see if we look at a picture. Here's a simple Antarctic food chain, starting with some underwater producers like phytoplankton. Phyto refers to the plant component of plankton. They're getting their energy from sunlight and they're building it into their body's tissues as food energy. They're being consumed by a small little consumer called a krill. And then finally, the krill is being consumed by a very large consumer called a whale. For example, this could be a baleen whale or a fin whale. So we've got a two-step food chain here with three organisms. Now, this is a food web, and if you look within a food web, there are lots and lots of combined food chains. Now, this one isn't in the water. This is terrestrial, which means on land, and here we have the producers at the bottom feeding multiple consumers, and then these consumers are feeding multiple subsequent consumers. So we've got lots and lots of multi-step food chains all built in this web that holds a community of plants and animals together. Now, let's look at the levels here. The first level is the producer level, and here I've drawn a box around the plants. Now, the next level up are the things that eat the plants, and because they're the first eaters, they're called primary consumers. Another name for them are herbivores, because they eat plants only. These are the secondary consumers because they have the second level of mouths, so the second level of eating, and they are carnivores, and they are eating the primary consumers. The tertiary consumers are higher up on the food web, and these guys are carnivores that are eating other consumers. And let me go back here. And because nobody really hunts and eats them, sometimes these guys are referred to as the top predators. Okay, sometimes you'll see instead of top, you'll see apex, and that'll be more clear when we look at food pyramids later on. So the top predators or the apex predators are the consumers that are at the ends of the food chain, so to speak. Okay, now we can't forget decomposers. Decomposers are organisms that feed on dead material. They're not hunters. They don't go out and catch their food. They just feed on dead material, and they convert the mass of this dead material into three different things: carbon dioxide, which goes into the air; water, which goes into the air and the soil; and other chemicals. We can, for right now, refer to them as fertilizers. These are nutrients that are being used by plants, and they're recyclers. Okay, because what they're actually doing is they're taking material that's bound up in the mass of living things called biomass, and they're putting it back out there for organisms, for producers to absorb. Remember, plants use carbon dioxide and water and fertilizers to do what they do, which is to be producers. So decomposers are the ultimate recyclers in nature. Now, decomposers primarily are bacteria and fungi. So bacteria in the soil and water and fungi in the soil and water are the things that make things rot. So when you hear about decomposers, you're talking about things that make things rot. Don't Don't confuse decomposers with scavengers, organisms that eat dead bodies like earthworms or termites or um, things that eat roadkill. These are organisms that are eating food. It just happens to be dead before they do it. Decomposers do that breakdown or that rotting procedure. So while a dead possum is laying on the road and being chewed on by crows and raccoons and other things like that, it's also rotting away by the decomposers that are growing inside it. Usually microscopic bacteria, but also some fungi. Now the role of decomposers, the role of decomposers in a food web, they're frequently left out, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in because if you think about it, the energy from dead plant material can go to fungi. Okay, so mushrooms and molds and mildews and all those things can eat dead plant material and cause it to decompose. If one of these primary consumers, if they don't get caught by a predator and they just die, their energy can go, part of their body energy can go to bacteria and they can rot away. All right, so at each step along this way, we can get dead bodies being decomposed. So even top predators, they're going to die at some point and they're going to be decomposed. So in a way, decomposers, okay, are distributed throughout food webs and they're kind of cleaning up the leftovers. They're frequently left out because they're small and nobody really thinks about them. But they are incredibly important to ecosystems because they are recyclers. They break down dead material so it doesn't lay around and get it back into the air and into the water and make fertilizers. All right, what I want you guys to do now to make sure you understand this is, can you draw a realistic food chain with at least 4 arrows? So that means you're going to need 5 organisms. And can you then label each organism to show its role, which is it a primary, secondary, tertiary, or even a 4th level consumer? Most food chains are 4 steps or less long, and there's a reason for that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So we'll stop there.